Welcome to the Touching into Presence podcast.
This podcast is for people who are interested in bodywork, empowerment, and somatic-based practices.
I am Nikki Olson.
I'm Andrew Rosenstock.
We are certified Rolfers.
Collectively, we're trained in various movement and bodywork therapies with an emphasis on somatic awareness and client resilience.
Through conversations, our goal is to share and explore mind-body paradigms to offer empowerment possibilities.
Today we're lucky to be in conversation with Neal Powers. Neal is a former president of the Rolf Institute, senior faculty for the Guild, and currently teaching for the European Guild. Neal has been Rolfing since the 70s at Esalen and a direct student of Dr. Rolf. Our talk with Neal was so delightful as he is a down-to-earth, grounded individual with a great sense of humor, deeply contemplative, and incredibly humble. This made for easy yet deep conversations. I'm personally really excited to share this conversation with you all and hope you get much out of it. So with that, let's begin our talk. Hey, Neal.
How are we doing?
Good.
Great. How was your swim?
It was good. It was refreshing.
Yeah?
Breathtaking.
Yeah.
The new obstacle we have here, I've got two granddaughters here right now.
Oh, lovely.
And they just kind of surprised us in appearing. So already I saw the doorknob turn. And so we'll see how long that lasts. And my wife's upstairs. So at some point, the doorbell may ring, the phone may ring, the usual peripheral stuff.
Yeah.
We'll coast through it.
I really enjoyed watching your talk from the Guild, and I was hoping to share you with a greater audience. I don't know how many people in the Rolf Institute now know who Neal Powers is. Just like I don't know how many people in the Guild know who Jan. They probably know Jan, but they might not know like John Martin or someone like that. And so sort of trying to bridge gaps and part of what we've accidentally figured out is that we're more, and Nikki says it better than I do, we're more alike than not.
Got it.
And so really now is a great time when the whole world is splintered. Why doesn't the SI world start to grow more together?
Good.
And
I think it's a worthy adventure you two are doing. I have no idea about how well it's done. Alice told me to listen to the podcasts of himself and Jan, and I did not. I've just been a bit busy. So
all right.
I thought, no big deal. I don't have to.
No, you don't.
It's kind of good that way. Coincidentally, kind of how we say accidentally, but we didn't want to be specific just to the Rolf Institute. We really wanted to talk to the greater world of structural integration and talking to some of the people who have a historical mark. It has become, or been hearing how this is common thread of wanting more to celebrate more of how we're more alike than different, and especially. And I had a short period of teaching in the phase 1 of the Rolf Institute, and it with newcomers, like they're not really interested in the history anymore, and why do we have this difference? And so Andrew and I have just been in this place of exploring that and asking questions, and maybe some of them are bold, and obviously if there's something, I know the history has some deep wounds in it. So of course, if we ask something that doesn't feel right for you to share, by all means, don't.
I hear you.
Yeah, but and also kind of like what was the history, because there's been so many different point of views. So I think by opening up the container and asking the questions is we get the answers.
I guess a good way to sort of start is the usual question: what brought you to Rolfing?
Well, what brought me to Rolfing was just a series of coincidences. As I said before, I was in college. My mother wanted me to be a diplomat, and so I was in the route to become a diplomat. And three things happened. The first thing is I fell in love, and my inclination to go to the Peace Corps lessened, and my inclination to continue on in the diplomatic field lessened. And then the human potential movement exploded. It was just a miraculous time with the various tea groups and counter groups. I did all that, all those adventures in addition to going to college. And then I just said enough of this, and I went down to Esalen. At the time, I was a cook, and it was a smart move in retrospect, because most college students are hungry, and where there's food is in the kitchen. So I went from dishwasher to chef's assistant and got really good at cooking, and I still am fairly happy with that. And that's how I got into Esalen. I got in through the kitchen door. And I met Dr. Rolf at Esalen. I met lots of people at Esalen. We got married at Esalen. Alan Watts married us on the cliffs of Big Sur. And I had heard about Dr. Rolf. I had read about her, but I was more interested in Fritz Perls and more interested in Alan Watts's Buddhist work. But then I met that woman, and that woman just floored me. And I don't remember the exact moment, but I did know immediately that she was a moment in history. I knew that this was someone that I needed to shadow, to be alongside. And a lot of my life has been around very powerful women. I really learned a lot from women. Maybe that's redundant to say powerful women. Women are powerful. So my mother was very influential, and she taught in Columbia, and our house was visited by Margaret Mead. Margaret Mead would come for meals and just scare the shit out of me. She would ask questions, and her directness was so strong that I would just stutter away and try and explain something. So I had this path of listening to powerful women. Here come the grandkids. And when I met Dr. Rolf, she had that same tone. She had that same vibrancy and intensity. What's up, kids? I'm just doing this. Okay, thanks. So, first of all, I wasn't her best student. I wasn't her favored student. I was more like a fruit fly to her. You know, you're trying to eat, and there's this thing that keeps flying in your face. I was intense. I was inspired by her work, but my type of intensity and my type of interest was not for her. She kept pushing me away in her own way, but that didn't make any difference. I knew I was going to be there. So she basically trained me like a dog, stay out of my face kind of thing. And, but I was loyal to her, and I continued to be loyal to her theories, and things she would say would just blow me away. I'd ask her a question, let's say, and she'd say, she'd give me an answer. And I'd say, why? Why do you say that leads to that? And she would get so frustrated with me at times. She'd say, don't ask me why, I just know. And I would go, okay, back off, Neal, back off. I just loved watching her. One of the things about my growing up is that I was very shy. I was kind of withdrawn. And in later years, I saw that as a great strength because a person who's not involved becomes more of an observer of people than an active participant. And I didn't realize that until later, that the ability to observe became a very powerful gift for me that came in through the back door, so to speak, through a weakness of interacting with people. So I found that I found that was very powerful.
Well, I can relate to the observer. I was also that, and I actually repeated kindergarten because the teachers just thought I was daydreaming all the time. And it probably, at a kindergarten age, yes, daydreaming, but definitely came from, I learned a lot from observing. Yeah. And I've been told that through, I'm one of those people that sometimes say that I'm an old soul just because of just kind of taking things in. Yeah. But I'm kind of curious how knowing yourself as an observer, but then so kind of maybe being a little quiet or shy, but then again, you also have this intensity, it sounds like, because you're that fruit fly that is persistent and staying in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what to say about that. I just know I wasn't her favorite, and I wanted to be her favorite. I mean, I guess everyone in her shadow wanted to be her light. I was interested in just how she interacted with people. I remember at one point she was holding my head. I was lying down on the table, and I was looking up, and I was saying, "Oh, just love me, Dr. Rolf. Just love me." And I blinked or something, and I saw that she had this space of distance, this space of not looking at my eyes, looking at her, wanting to be loved. There was this moment I had where she had this solid space between me and herself. And I found that in my own work as valuable. I find that when I work with people, I don't want to so much have them love me. I want them to more love themselves and be more aware of themselves. And I don't need to. I come from a place of love, but it's not. It has a space to it. It doesn't have a clinging to it or a needing to be held. It's a place I come from, and that moment when Dr. Rolf was holding my head and working on my neck, that may have been the seed to all this that I talk about now when I'm trying to when I'm inviting my students to be themselves, not to be the hero or not to be anything but themselves. And I found I made my moments with Dr. Rolf significant. I remember one time I brought her breakfast and I put it on the table for her. She loved kefir. You could make anything, but you had to make sure you put kefir in it. And so she had this bowl of kefir and something, maybe fruit. And it was her birthday. And it was like your weather in Colorado, kind of cloudy. And she started to take a spoon of her breakfast. And she said, "It's always sunny on my birthday." And she lifts her head up and brings the spoon to her mouth, and this thing of sunlight hits her gray hair. I don't know where it came from, but I saw it, and I was just like startled because it blew me away. Those moments I look for, I don't look for, I just observe, and it touched me. So I did my utmost to be in her presence. And most of the time I succeeded. She had a very Zen way of teaching. I mean, she had all her little, her parlor tricks. I was always impressed with her parlor tricks. She'd be sitting in her rocking chair rocking, and she'd look over at Nikki and say, "Nikki, it's under your third finger." And Nikki would have her hand underneath the body. And Nikki would do some work, and she would say, "Your third finger, Nikki, not your second finger, your third finger." and then Nikki would change her shift, and she'd go, "There. See what I mean? Can you feel that? Do you see what I'm talking about?" So there were moments like those parlor tricks that I really enjoyed. And a great student that took a lot of duress, I thought at the time, but I think he enjoyed it, was Jan Sultan. Jan Sultan had a great relationship with her, but it was a give and take. And I still encourage my practitioners, my colleagues, to take classes with Jan. They can't take them anymore with Emmett, who had great teaching skills, and Peter, bless his heart, invited change. Emmett made change. Peter invited change. And Jan just has a lot of dimensions to him, and I encourage people to take work from him. When I first took my auditing class, when my practicing class, Jan assisted Ida, and that blew me out of the water. That was an incredible graduating class with Jan, who in the evenings would do private sessions. And his first client was Tom Myers, who was just coming in, looked like John Denver, and Jan did his work with Tom Myers at the time, who wanted to get into the class but couldn't get in. So that was that. But Dr. Rolf, I still think of her. In fact, Emmett's book, which is his class notes, it was given to me. The front says, "What would Ida do?" That's the one little 3-word question in the opening of his book, of his class notes.
There was just something there that hit me of this sort of, I'm trying to find the right words for it so that either I don't sound offensive or I don't sound idiotic, or something in between. And somewhere in there is what I'm trying to say, which is there's that sense of what would Ida do. For a lot of us, we're told all these stories, and that's what they are. I'm probably personally like 2 generations removed from Ida. Yeah. And everyone coming gets more and more. There's something, and I think it's one of the things Nikki and I are trying to do, of really preserving that essence of Ida that it's just amazing. I can imagine only, but you've actually experienced and lived it and know this. You have that firsthand knowledge of which I'm a few hands away from it. It's just I'm not necessarily asking you a question. I'm more just in awe of it in a way.
For me, it was so ordinary to be with Dr. Rolf. It's just like I was at Esalen. The various teachers were there. Dr. Rolf was there. Now those ordinary moments are more extraordinary. But at the time, it's just like it's going to go on forever. I get to learn. I get to sit with Dr. Rolf for years and years and years. Didn't happen, but I think all of us have these moments that become so important. But in the beginning, at the moment, we're just like, oh, that's interesting. Okay, waistline back, top of the head up. Okay, yeah, I can practice that. Or Dr. Rolf saying, Nikki, it's under your 3rd finger, not your 2nd finger. So she'll say that tomorrow to someone else. I just didn't, I held it as just information. And now I hold it more as insight and inspiration. But at the time, it was just, you're in a class with a teacher. What I have learned, and what I really try, I do more than try, I get close to insisting with my practitioners, is to be their own practitioner, is not imitate Emmett, not imitate Nikki, not imitate you, Andrew, just to become themselves. And those moments when they just kind of accept the mystery of not knowing and start to touch, feel, smell, sense what to do next, those are like the primary moments of learning, I think, for people. And we all have these. I mean, if you listen to that tape, I could not see. Now, seeing is different than observing. observing is you see patterns of movement, but seeing is watching tissue move like fabric. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to watch the fabric of the body move, and I could not do that. But I learned it through touch. My touch became my eyes, so to speak. And so I started teaching workshops on seeing through feelings. I had some title like that, I tried to teach my practitioners how to develop that. And I think the real strength in that teaching is that you don't just do the work, but you do the work, evaluate the work, you do the work, you evaluate. So you have more of an involvement in what have you done? You don't just plow ahead, or you don't just ask for movement and then ask for movement again, but you evaluate and ask for feedback from the client. But I think it's so important now in my own work. I do so much evaluation. Maybe it's almost half, or maybe more than half my work is evaluation. And I do that through touch. If I put my left hand on your shoulder, Andrew, and my right hand on your knee, I want to be able to feel my two hands through your body. If my left hand can feel my right hand on your knee, but my right hand cannot feel my left hand, there's something in that direction, in that line, or in that lack of movement, strain that I need to address. So that's what I'll do. I'll do this kind of Helen Keller touching of bodies when they're talking. I hold the head. I listen to the vibration of the voice. I feel more vibration of their voice on the left side of their head than on the right side of their head. Okay, so I start to work. They're telling me there's life story, and I'm feeling for vibration. That's all I'm feeling for is vibration. Or I have my hand on their chest and on their head, and I can feel this movement, but I can't feel the movement down from the head to the hand on the chest. I do a lot of that. It's called transmission of movement. That's what I call it. And that I developed on my own. Now, Dr. Rolf used to say 901. We would say something that we thought was the most enlightening thing we've ever uncovered in our practice. She'd say 901. And there'd be that moment, and she'd say, I've told you that 900 times. And now you're telling me this for the first time, like you just discovered it. 901. Used to crack me up. Still does, to think about it.
So it sounds like a lot of what you're sharing of the early days of the training, and we've kind of heard from other people, Judith Aston, who also, and Jan Sultan, which is kind of interesting, of these stories where there is this essence of Dr. Ida Rolf that was hard to put into words, but just knew, like there was this visceral determination of, I'm going to be in this class and I'm going to learn this grade. And then when you're kind of speaking to how kind of the uniqueness of just being in the work, and that you had the luxury of just kind of being with it and creating with it in some ways. Yeah. That a lot of it is from learning from observation, because correct me if I'm wrong, when it was at Esalen, it was still very much in its early stages, where Ida at the time was kind of from teaching from, I just know. It's like, I just know. I don't have documentation. I don't have textbooks for it. This, I know it works. And you're going to do it the way I tell you to do it. And the 900 times I'm going to tell you how to do it. Yeah. Which I think is so cool, how this work has been able to carry on kind of for a while now, still young, but that Ida at the time didn't have a lot of time with her work to really bring it into documentation.
This
Correct?
is true. This is true. She tried. I mean, there were several scientific projects. She really tried to, she wanted to be more accepted. She really did. It was, and she knew she had a limited amount of time. I suspected she knew she had a limited amount of time. And the frustrating part is there was this group of mostly hippies that were interested in her. She didn't want the hippies. She wanted the documentation, the scientists. She wanted some acceptance. She tried to teach this work to osteopaths, and they assimilated some of it, but they really didn't do the 10 sessions, obviously. And we all know how much manual labor this is. I mean, this is definitely physical work to perform this work. But there's ways around it. There's ways. I remember watching Gail Olgren, who has a different last name now. She was so thin-like and Esalen, and just this wisp of a model of a woman, and she was getting great results. And she was asking for movement. Most of us were plowing, doing the rototilling work, and but she would fix her hand somewhere and ask for various movements, and she was getting incredible results. So, yes, Dr. Rolf had that higher understanding, I'll call it. But really, again, I keep coming back to this. We have to, as individuals, develop our own way of accomplishing this work. And it's still a heartbreak for me on what happened to the Guild and the Institute. And
could you speak to a little bit of that? Because before you were saying that, that yes, as practitioners, we kind of, to be authentic in our work, have to find a way to do it that works for us, that we're not just copying from our previous teacher. But in that, so yes, you need to be individualized, but not so much so that you're taking the information and then creating something new, that there's still this hallmark. What is owning our work? And that was a question I had asked Jan Sultan with kind of the level of touch. Like for me, historically, I know Rolfing's known for being super painful. Yeah. It drives me crazy because it doesn't, yes, there's a little bit of, maybe a heavier handed pressure than maybe some you might experience in, a spa massage, but that people don't want to come and get Rolf because, and I find this in Boulder, which I think is kind of interesting, seeing that the school's been here, and you would think that reputation wouldn't be so alive here because so many people have been Rolf. But I still come across with it. We're like, Rolfing sounds so interesting, but I don't want to feel that pain.
Exactly.
And I'm like, wait, it doesn't have to be that way. So that was a question that I brought to Jan of like, and he was kind of, well, that is our work, that we're kind of known for that. But of course, there's still this spectrum of touch. Yeah. So I would love to hear a little bit more of speaking to, because the divide with the Rolf Institute was, again, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding was some people wanted to change it or add to the work, where other people were like, no, it really needs to stay the way Ida taught it. Yeah, that was the main split. That was the big change. That after her passing, well, you asked me. You gave me so many things to think about. It's interesting that when people talk about change, it involves more of a challenge. Like I'm going to start meditating. But if you start talking about change in a body, that's got to be painful. It just kind of assimilates that. It just has that. There's got to be pain involved. It's got to be uncomfortable. And I think it's a confront for a lot of people, but really those of us that have some kind of a daily practice of yoga, let's say, or exercise, running, or even meditating, there's that moment of, gee, do I really have to do this? I mean, I know I made my mind up to do this every day, but here I go. And all of a sudden, then you get more comfortable doing it. And
I find that in my yoga practice that there's days I go like, God, why am I doing this? Well, 10 minutes into why am I doing this, I realize, oh, I know why I'm doing this. I'm getting centered again. Here these frayed thoughts are leaving me. So there was that part of you talked about that brought that thought up. The other thought is pain has bad PR. It just has really bad PR. Some good business person's got to get into the pain thing and change it, because it does. If anything, we all know it hurts good. I mean, there's that certain kind of extra stretch you get, and I don't. I mean, when I first started my work, I was painful. I created pain. And it was a perfect environment. We had primal therapists down the hall screaming. We had the Vietnam War protesters. Everyone was screaming. So what the heck? Go ahead and scream for my clients. And my sessions were 2.5 hours in the beginning. And I thought they stood up out of fear. Like, if this guy touches me again, I'm going to jump out that window. I mean, they mocked up better posture, I think, just to please me. But they keep coming back. It's so interesting that I tell myself that this is the oldest profession, touch. It goes way back to how important touch is. And I caution my colleagues about, especially the early ones, you don't land like an eagle on a dove. You land like a bird on a branch. You come in like a wave on the beach. There's a way of touch that is an introduction to the betweenness of the two of you. And I think that's important. In fact, I know it's important. And then the whole thing about this split, it was already happening. Dr. Rolf was ill and failing, and she had gone back to New Jersey. And these various power plays were taking place, and it was definitely a challenging time. It definitely was. The one thing I got out of my diplomatic experience is any country, any individual, any couple, as they start to become a couple, an individual, a country, they create their own identity. And when you create your own identity, you separate yourselves from others. You create a separation. Or in terms of our political system, you build walls. So, and you do the wall building, you do the separation to become your own identity. But if you use that as an overstrength, you're lost. You don't have a relationship. And I can see I sense in your podcasts this desire to build bridges more than walls, and I think it's extremely important. And I thank you, whoever else you are, for creating this, because that's the only way we're going to get ahead is sharing information rather than dictating positions.
Thank you. Yes, it's been a great pleasure to go on this journey and to speak with so many different people, whether it's been SI people that were directly related to IDA or other people who were around in this human potential movement who didn't necessarily study with IDA or structural integration, but were in this world. So it's definitely been a great journey to go down, especially during COVID when, my practice essentially stopped.
Mine too.
I have 2 little ones now that I'm homeschooling, but yeah, could you speak a little bit? I'm really intrigued with the split and how you talked about it was maybe already happening in the personalities, how, as becoming one as structural integrators. Yes, of course, there's these like-minded individuals that are coming together that does create separation and differentiation to other groups. But within the SI, original structural integrators, Rolfers, the two different personalities that were being created, what were that? Because I think especially people who are coming into the training and maybe trying to decide the Rolf Institute or the Guild, I think in some way people are picking up on this historical personality, but what was it? What is it? If you don't mind speaking to that a little
not
bit.
at all. First of all, I don't think it's important anymore. I don't think that part of the history is that important anymore, because it was mostly egos. It really was mostly egos that knew better accordingly and wanted to either make their contribution on the shoulders of Dr. Rolf, and those that thought, I don't know really that much. I'm going to stick with this for a while, and I don't want you to change session 7 that much, and I don't want you to bring in various other modalities. Let's just do this. My whole thing was, Dr. Rolf basically said it took her 40 years to come up with the work, to refine the work. I thought, shit, okay. Took her 40 years. It'll probably take me 60, but I'm going to stick with the work. So basically, that's what I've done. The temptations to give it another name, and as you said, develop your own work and then create your own modality style school, I think is very tempting for people. I think it's in part of kind of shining one's ego or self-importance. I'm degrading that a little, but it's a challenge to many of us, and it's a challenge to me. I sometimes want to teach I teach my practitioners my style, but I say, now this is my style. This is not from the basic 10. This is just something that evolved from my doing this work. Here's what I do. You don't have to do it, but here's how I do it, and here's the results I get. I find it most valuable to teach the 10-session series. I think the basis of this work is to do the 10-session series. And then you can add your cranial sacral, and you can add your other visceral manipulation as your work develops. But to me, what's most important, and it's really hard for me because I see so many people with how I would perceive as an insecurity, wanting to get as much knowledge as possible and squeeze it through this toothpaste tube called Rolfing. And that tube gets all over everywhere, and they lose their focus. They lose their focus of, first I have to de-strain the body. I've got to do it superficially. I have to ask for movement. I have to ask for feedback. I have to start to develop their sense of integration, that sense of the line. And I have to do it in that order. It's just like a relationship. You don't just dive into bed, so to speak, or dive into having 2 kids. You can, but good luck. What you do is you just start to find similarities, and the relationship develops as the differences change or lessen. So I don't have a whole lot to say about I'll tell you, the biggest thing about that split is I miss my friends. That's the big one. I mean, I miss my times with my colleagues. The meetings were a little hair-raising, the teachers' faculty meetings. But by and large, I just miss them. That's it. I don't have animosity. It's just kind of an emotional missing them. And
has that always been, or is that what age is?
Yeah, it's lately I've talked with Jan Sultan, but that was after like 30 years. It's kind of like a bad breakup, but I mean, I don't sit around whimpering or head in the shadows. I keep going on, but it's just part of my life. It's just part of what happens. It was miraculous. It was genuinely beautiful. The split happened. It was heartbreaking, but a heart's a muscle, so it didn't really break.
Right. And you were on the board. So did you split with the Institute right away? No, what was your involvement? Because you were on the board for the Rolf Institute for quite some time, right? Or director?
I was on the board, and then in 1980, I became the president. So I was the president of the Rolf Institute for 6 years, 80 to 86. And it was during that time that I started to realize this ship is sinking. There's something about this ship that I need to step away. I was not so much interested in joining the guild. The guild didn't happen then. It happened, I don't know, 89 or something like that. I just sensed I wrote to Peter, I remember, and I said, Peter, there's a storm coming. And I feel like I'm a farmer out in the field waving a rake at this storm, and I'm not doing anything. I'm moving on. And I wished Peter well and Stacy well. And it was just heartbreaking. That's all it was.
I love that that image in my mind is simple but powerful of you holding a rake, and as one who speaks a lot in allegory and metaphor, I really enjoy it. Yeah, when I'd seen this other video of you, there was something that really captivated me, and I think part of it is, I mean, you were married by Alan Watts, so clearly you have well, maybe not clearly, but there's some sort of an introspective, meditative aspect of you. And I'm from what I'm hearing sort of about how you miss your friends, and I'm sorry for that, even though I was born in 1980, the year that you were just starting. But I think that's probably one of the things that's helped you a lot, I would guess, is that sense of introspection. For me,
for all of us, yeah.
Well, I don't see, I mean, that's one of the things I don't see a lot in the Rolf Institute, or it's not that I don't see a lot. I mean, I think a lot of people have meditation, but it's not recommended, or it's not highlighted per se. And I had spoken to someone recently from another school, and I was talking with him about some sort of stuff. And he was sort of saying how he had, like, what the prerequisites were, like meditation and having a therapist. Like, these were like, in order to be along these ways, was having a way of seeing yourself, and then also having outside sort of come in. And these, in my education within the SI world, I know a lot of SI people may do meditation or may do yoga, but I don't necessarily see it as much. And when I'd seen you speak, it was very clear to me, like, oh, this is someone who does a lot of meditation. And then when you mentioned earlier about going to Esalen for Fritz Perls, that also sort of, there's, I think, that aspect of SI. I mean, there is I think, we're this category of so many things. Like, when you ask someone, what is structural integration? I was on a podcast a week ago, and I said, here's my elevator, bullshit pitch answer. But, like, really, what is the person coming from? Because if they're coming for physical, there's that side. If they're coming for a social, biological, whatever, spiritual, there can be that as well. I personally, before I became a Rolfer, I was an Esalen massage practitioner.
Oh, cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, good for you. Is that how you two met?
No.
You meet at Esalen?
No, Nikki and I met through the Rolf Institute, because we're both graduates of the, oh God, what's the name now? The Rolf. Let's just say the Rolf Institute. We don't have to go through the different names.
Rolf.
Yeah. Dr. Ida P. Rolf, Foundation of Structural Integration and Movements of the Arts. No.
That's fun. That's fun.
But that one of the things that Esalen massage taught me from bodywork was really a sense of going inwards. Which I see with some. I mean, my phase 3 teacher was he would be there when you were there, was Ray McCall.
Ray McCall. I was going to say his name before you said it.
Yeah. And Ray is a very introspective person.
Yes, he is.
And I love that. I mean, when you were talking before about Ida doing her parlor tricks and being like, no, the third finger. I mean, that Ray has that, and for me, it's a lot of like, how do you tap into the field like that? And I think part of it is just meditation. But the whole point of this sort of thing is, I think that the reason why you can look at that and say, I miss my friends, and look back and not be as upset, how it sounds, is because of that self practice.
Yeah, I think I've had to detach myself from that in a way, and I think the years just seem to wash things, make them less significant, unless I want to make them real significant. But I don't want to make them real significant. There was a moment when I went to Alan Watts to ask him to marry us, and he was with his group of people at Esalen around a table. And I just politely went up to Alan and I explained my request. And he looked at me, he just turned like you'd see in a horror picture, this head turning slowly. And he looks at me and he says, you're at the top of your relationship and you think it's going to last forever. Oh God. And I just collapsed. He says, of course I'll do it. But it was kind of a dismissal kind of thing. And back to his buddies. And we had one of the point houses at Esalen. There's 3 houses off the garden that are right on the cliffs of the Pacific Ocean. And I cried from leaving the dining hall right up to the front door. And I kind of wiped myself and I walked in and I said, Dara, he said yes. And she went, oh, fabulous, But I didn't tell her for years, maybe 20 years. I didn't tell her of that moment when he said, you're at the pinnacle of your love and you think it's going to last forever. So that was such a great lesson now, but not the moment. It was like getting hit with a board. But sometimes I have to be hit with a board. Or sometimes I have to feel like I've been hit by a board to really gather some insight from it.
Do you think that him saying that was kind of like, you're kind of like, well, wait a minute. Who says you can, who are you to say this is the pinnacle? I'm going to live this life.
Well, I think that would be Nikki. I think that would be you saying it. No, I was stunned. In retrospect, I can't remember, but I think I was just stunned. And of course it made me think about it and it hurt me, but it didn't matter. I don't mind being humbled. I find being humbled as quite and I'm not masochistic. I don't mind being humbled.
Well, you're still married to Dara these days, so
yeah.
I think you proved Alan Watts wrong.
Well, for the moment, Alan might have just said that off the cuff. He was such an amazing guy. One time he came into one of the rooms to speak, and he was so inebriated he couldn't stand up. In fact, he had to lie right down on his back. He lied supine, and he gave the lecture. And I was more staring at him, not listening, but just like, this guy's like totally tanked. And then some years later, I listened to his tape. It didn't have the drunk guy lying on the floor. It had him like doing this with his arms, and the audio was just amazing. And that just blew me away. Alan surprised me so many times. One of the funniest things is we were at the baths. I was in a hot tub with some folks, and he was giving a massage, and he fell asleep on top of the woman, but he just passed out basically. And she's going, Alan, Alan, Alan. He's snoring away. He was a funny guy. But anyway, let's get back to the work. Let's get back to Rolfing.
Well, I mean, for me, that is part of the work. In my view, I think when you can start to bring in some of the meta-conscious, for Alan, it was Hindu-based. I forget the exact word. He was an Hinduologist. Yeah. But that totally, I see that as the work. It's all connected.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It is.
But I know Nikki has more questions about the actual work.
Yeah, please.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I think it's just this, being part of this podcast has been so fun for just understanding the history and the two schools. And, I didn't know about the split or even the guild. I was already in school in Colorado. So, and my first Rolfer was Ray McCall. So I just naturally fell into the Rolf Institute out of convenience and not knowing that there was other schools. Yeah. And so by being in the environment, you learn a little bit about it. And it always has been kind of that statement. It was like the Guild, they just do the 10 series. And the Rolf Institute, of course, teaches the 10 series. But there's really not much talk of what else, like what the Rolf Institute does different.
Yeah.
And so have been a Rolfer for almost 20 years and been part of the teaching, and still, like, I still didn't know until we started doing this podcast. I really didn't have met many other Guilders. And so I'm finding by hearing these stories is really gaining a deeper appreciation of teaching just the 10 series. Because again, from being in the Rolf Institute and seeing, have experienced a bunch of different teachers, and then being in a teaching role and having students come and being like, well, I want to study with this teacher because they're more cranial based, or I want to study with this teacher because they're more visceral. And I've seen that, how some students kind of get lost in what is the 10 series, depending on the teacher that's teaching it, because the teacher who's teaching it is throwing in their biases of whatever continuing education that they've gone down and really liked and have complimented the work with. And so just when you were talking about it, I just something landed with me of how the Guild isn't just teaching the 10, it's teaching, holding on to the purity. And I think, which in some way it's sad that the split happened, but I think also the split in some way has offered two different ways of learning for people. And it kind of almost helps bring the work, because I know, again, through various conversations, there's still frustration of like, we're still so unknown. And I think with these different schools, it does help offer different type of learners to be able to learn the work in a way that's better suited for them.
Yes.
But I then also appreciate kind of with the Rolf Institute, sometimes it does get a little far out there where there's some classes I've assisted in or been a part of where like, wait a minute, this is very cranial sacral. Yeah. Like, and students get frustrated because they're like, this is, I didn't receive this type of work. That my work was in the tissue, like feeling pressure, not this like kind of off body type of work. So I don't know, just something listening to your story and talking about why there's this split and people wanting to stick with just this series landed with me a little bit more of honoring the purity of the 10 series. Yeah. And not embellishing it with a bunch. And I like the other stuff for sure, but there's something to be said about sticking with the original work and not embellishing it too much at an early learning stage.
Yeah, coming from it, I think that's wise. I think it just I think learning anything, including like riding a bicycle, you have to first learn to balance on the bicycle, and the basic 10 is a way of developing a sense of balance in your work. And it's so tempting, as I've said before, for any practitioner to veer off. In fact, Dr. Rolf used to say, I know many of you are going to leave this work. You're going to change it, but you'll be back. I love that, but you'll be back. That so touched me. It would just charm me when, and she'd almost say it at every class that I attended, but you'll be back. And all that means to me is just keep in mind the basic 10 sessions, that you don't really want to do your visceral work in the first session. You don't really want to do your cranial work in the first session, but you have it as a tool. And even my thing about tone and transmission of movement, I mean, I do use that, but when I'm teaching it, I really try and formulate within those practitioners, listen, let's first do this first session. And you over there, you're really good at your cranial work. Okay, you can do some of it, but really don't let it dominate your understanding of this basic first session. Just, you can keep it as a strength, but don't let it be an overstrength. An overstrength is, I find that term a positive way of talking about a weakness, that it's an overstrength. And I
think that works really well. Speaking just of muscles, long muscles are sometimes they're overdoing it. They don't need to. Whereas they're too strong, they're weak.
They're weak. It becomes a weakness. Yeah.
Does can you speak to does the guild have the 5 principles? Do they operate from a principle standpoint where the Rolf Institute, the 10 series, does have these founding principles?
Well, first of all, I've left the guild.
Okay.
I'm no longer with the guild. I'm more affiliated with the European Guild, with Alice's community and Taka's community in Japan. And I honestly don't know what you meant by 5 principles, or 5 something you said.
Closure. Well, that would be the last one. Support, palintonicity, closure, adaptability,
holism.
Yep.
They were, as far as I understand, they partly brought in from Jeff Maitland.
Yeah, it sounds like Jeff. That definitely sounds like Jeff. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you read any of his books, perchance?
No, I read some of his articles.
I just wanted to thank you for spending time to talk about the split, and I don't want to keep on belaboring it, but I think it's important that the questions get asked, because the questions are still being asked by new Rolfers, and I think it's important, especially in this just the state of the world now. It's like enough about the split, we're way more similar than different, and there's great things about both schools, and it's not one school is better than the other, and that we should all be in a way of uniting, and because it's going to serve us. If this work stays in kind of wanting to put it in different schools and different identities, then it's a huge disservice. What we need to have is more unity, so we can grow together and celebrate our differences, but how we're all in it for the greater good of our clients. Exactly. And how to get our clients in the world to be able to orient to health in a way that they get to promote. We're just kind of there to facilitate the change, but it comes from their work and where they want to take it. And that's not any different in the Guild, the Rolf Institute, the somatic movement worlds that are out there. Now the curiosity, we've, as best as we can, have asked the questions. The curiosity hopefully can be died down. The answers are now there, and we get to move on. Yeah.
I like that you were mentioning how you're doing more with Alesh now. And we had a great talk with him. He really opened my eyes to seeing things in another way. But one of the things I've talked with him about is this idea of how do we bring things together. And one idea I sort of liked was some sort of possible co-teaching, and or co-lecturing, or something where you had a topic or something, and you had people from a few different schools as the instructors, and it's a way of, well, I can see how Neal would teach that. I could see how Heller would teach that. I could see how Jan or whoever it may be, and really having a way of bringing together so that we can say, yes, we have our differences in this, but this is what we're sharing, and this is creating a bigger conversation of SI, and not, well, this is what the Rolf Institute said, and this is what the European Guild said, so I don't listen to you. Unfortunately, with COVID, so much stuff is shut down.
Yeah.
That's one of the ways that I see going forward is, and like what Nikki said is true. Each school, you're going to find the right school for you, or you're going to find the wrong school. I mean, I know a few people who switched. They went to one, it didn't work. They left and they went to the other.
Yeah.
But you'll find it right. And then you'll work in that for a few years, but then what? And for me, I'm like that fruit fly you spoke about earlier for you. And I want to always kind of be like, I never want to say, this is it. This is 100, even who I am is constantly like, let me get a magnifying glass and keep looking at it and seeing it. And so, I think that's one of the ways I think I see us going forward. And I have seen like Michael Pollan, who was a Rolf Institute. Yeah. He's been teaching across other ones. We had Kirsten Schumacher on last week, and she's been teaching, across. And I see that sort of as the way, but not just single units. For me, I really think it's about having some sort of meeting of and one of the things how I view you, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but and this kind of comes out of that Esalen tradition of the elders, right? I think that there's something about listening to our elders. That's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, not just because of what you said, but you've been steeped in this work and you've been in charge for a while. Elder not being an age term, but sort of yeah. But I think it's something about having the elders together to share. And so I guess we'll see how that unfolds in time.
Yeah, we'll see how it unfolds. I actually have this idea that the Rolf Institute has some big gathering. Is it next year or 22 or there's some big gathering coming up, some anniversary of Dr. Rolf something or other. And
well, the European Guild is doing that.
No, yeah, I know that, but no, I thought the Rolf Institute was doing it.
I'm not aware of that, but that doesn't mean anything.
It was from Richard Innes, I heard it, that he was trying to orchestrate such a meeting of elders that were long ago affiliated with the Institute. And it had something to do with the anniversary. But anyway,
so what's really interesting, and again, I don't want to go too much into the history, but there was something that really occurred to me today is that the story that Nikki and I will hear as Rolf Institute people is probably a little different than the story that Guilders will have heard.
It's possible. Yeah, I think that's with anything, really.
Well, it's called the Rashomon effect.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yeah, there's an old movie, a Japanese movie called Rashomon, which is a story of like it's a story told in three parts. It's his side, her. Yeah.
Different perceptions.
Perceptions.
Yeah. That was great.
But then the thing I was going to say was that the way that we had heard was that Michael, Jan, and one more sort of were it wasn't Peter and Emmett. There were 5 original teachers, senior teachers. Yeah. And when I had left, the 5 of them were all left sort of with no one in charge. So it was Peter, Emmett, Jan, maybe Tom. Was Tom Wing? No.
Not Tom Wing. Wasn't me.
Wasn't Stacy. No.
Anyway,
so that those sort of 5 were the senior people, and then when the split came, it was 3 Peter and
3-2. Yeah,
3-2. Whoever the third one was. Now this is clearly.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Forget what's happening. I think if we just hold the idea of a bridge, that's great. And I wish all of us well in our work, and I think we all do good work. I think the various schools, even though it's every once in a while you get that I'm better than that group, it's just like so silly. It's so silly. Because
I think and when I was in my early years, for sure, I was like, oh, I go to the Rolf Institute. I'm the only one that can call it a Rolfer.
Yeah.
But, as with me growing up and also, having 2 young kids and just being, and again, being in a teacher role for a short period, and also being this type of, I need a lot of different ways to learn. And I'm really coming back to celebrating, using the split as a mixed blessing. I don't like that people got hurt and, friendships were broken or lost. And, But coming back to how this can serve us to bring this work to all different types of all different types of learners. When we're all different, we have all different type of needs, and that's what it should be about. No more of the split and the egos that are involved, and just be like, we got different schools. And I mean, someone who took the work and created his own, Tom Myers. I mean, he's made a great niche for himself of bringing this work into the fitness world. I'm half in the fitness world, and it's mind-boggling. It's sometimes I kind of have to be like, wait a minute, it's Ida Rolf that created this work. But good for him in the way like that he really has helped the fitness world understand fascia.
Good. That's right. Yeah.
And, in the Rolf Institute world, which again, it's great. Like I kind of dance in between both of like, I can be a total set rep person. And I also can be like very just feel and experience, and let's be way more somatic in terms of, fitness. And but like, again, going back to like, there's way more needs of benefits of being of these different schools than then just talking about why and this one's better. It's just this one's going to meet this learner's type of needs.
Yep.
I was going to say, Neal, just respecting your time for the near future, for people, if people want to study with you or learn more, you're doing most stuff through Alesh, but my guess is with COVID, how do people find more about you?
Well, they can always email me. They can always email me. I'm a bit off the grid as far as social media goes. I've canceled everything. I've canceled Japan, Warsaw, Poland, Prague is what I meant to say, not Poland. And that's been heart-rendering. But I'm reading more. I'm working in the garden. I'm walking more. I mean, it's I've definitely, there's some silver linings to this pandemic that I think are more for introspection and taking care of oneself. But that's the best way they can reach me is through email.
Hopefully after pandemic, you'll be out teaching back again in Europe and Japan.
Yeah. And probably Japan will be first. I've had to cancel that advanced class, and they were halfway into it, and I feel obligated.
This has been really, really a pleasure. Like I said earlier, I really enjoyed watching you and listening to you. And I remember it was the start of me actually being open to the guild, because I'd met guilders before and didn't have the best interaction with them. So my first two interactions weren't great. Therefore, I associated all guilders are this way, and somehow came across Dario's posts on social media and started watching. And I liked some of this and there. And then it was actually yours where I was like, there's something there really. And that was one of the things that helped, I would say in some ways, spark this cross communication. And Alesh has been, wonderful and helping with that as well, as the one who connected us, but also opening doors. I've really enjoyed just that cross connection with him and what he's trying to do for the work.
He's doing a good job.
Yeah. But yeah, just really grateful. And it's been I've really enjoyed talking with you and listening to you.
Me too, you.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you well.
Yeah.
Nikki, nice meeting you, and Andrew.
Likewise. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for your time, and we'll be in touch.
You're welcome both. Bless you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to us at Touching into Presence. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you did enjoy it, we'd appreciate if you'd leave a positive review of the podcast and subscribe to it through the platform of your choice. When you do this, it really helps other people find us, and we greatly appreciate your support. We look forward to hearing back from you and catching you on our next conversation at Touching into Presence. Bye-bye.